On our 9th episode,
Oh, we're almost at 10.
yes, of the Stars of Tomorrow podcast. I am Heather Cannon. I am a co-founder and executive director of Uniting Distant Stars, and we're always happy to have you online.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kevin Na. I'm a volunteer with Uniting Distant Stars since 2017. I saw the little shout out on LinkedIn. Appreciate that. I didn't, I kind of lost track of time. It's already been 8 years. Time sure does fly.
Oh, it does fly by. Yeah, and it was funny because you and another volunteer both had anniversaries out on LinkedIn. So I'm like, oh, wow. I mean, it was like, wow, I got to pay attention to this stuff. So, yeah, so thank you for your service and being part of this journey of doing this podcast. And
Oh,
so
yes.
today we kind of want to talk about what is United Distant Stars? What do we do? Why are we doing this? And
Mm.
so basically, I just gonna highlight some things, and then Kevin can start doing what he does well. I'll start asking questions. So I think one of the things to cover is what is our mission, and maybe the mission might need to be refined a little bit more, but it's to link future leaders and global innovators to educational resources and vocational training to influence positive changes in the world. And our vision kind of goes with that is to equip the youth with the knowledge and skills to realize their potential and become positive change makers. And what is that? So you can see skills and vocational training are part of that. But let me just step back a little bit. What some of the few things that kind of set us apart from other organizations is I'm a US citizen, I live in Minnesota, um, I have a full-time job, I have other responsibilities. So I alone could never make this organization get to where it is today. We started in 2011 with projects, 2013 we became official. So we've been doing this now for 12 years. And the reason why is I partnered with someone on the ground.
Mm.
Calvin Fumba is our co-founder, and he's the one that runs everything on that side. And his passion was to help his people. And he's a tradesperson. He's come from humble beginnings. He was raised by a single mother, grew up in poverty. He had his education disrupted. So he gets it. He understands what the youth are going through. I think another, so basically we can describe it as boots on the ground because I think a
Mm.
lot of NGOs fail because someone's in another country decides to do something, but they never are there enough to make sure things go.
Right.
Usually they might bring someone in, but they don't necessarily are driven by the mission because, they weren't empowered. They just feel like I'm being used. I don't have any say in it. I think the other thing that has helped us too is like, okay, we wanted to work with youth and we knew education and skill training was important, but we didn't come in dictating what was necessary. We listened. And if we go back to the Ebola crisis, the schools got shut down. And so everybody had to learn quickly how to keep yourself safe in the Ebola crisis. And where we were located at the time, we weren't really an area of concern. But the youth said, we don't want to sit down. We want to be learning something,
Right.
and so that's kind of how our vocational program came to be. And it was by listening. I think a lot of times people go in, I hear people, oh, I built a toilet and now they're using it as a warehouse. Because it's like, what do people need?
Right.
And can you make that happen? So I think sometimes we forget to listen. I think another thing that's important is we take a holistic group approach as best as we can. So we can train someone's skills, but if you don't help them reestablish their own self-worth, it's hard to build confidence. Because as Kevin and I know, Liberia doesn't have a very strong private sector, and it's usually foreign owned.
Mm,
So a lot of our young people need to know how to hustle to become independent. They need to know how to either be entrepreneurs or independent contractors where they find gigs. And because of that, we've had better success. So I was reflecting, Kevin, on those interviews I did last year, and I was playing around with AI because, that's what we do sometimes. And
yeah.
I just kind of
Nowadays.
wanted to get a summary from those. And it, some of the themes that came out was empowerment through vocational training. So what they all said is that we really value hands-on training that help them to get the practical skills, open doors to employment and entrepreneurship, overcoming financial barriers. Now we can't do free. We can't afford to do free. We're not that big of an organization. We don't have
Mm,
a big purse there to cover everything, but we do make it affordable and accessible because we have a 50% scholarship, and then we give them a
mhm,
pretty generous payment plan. And because basically, we also think if they put a little money into it, they're going to, that, what do you call that, a little skin in the game, they're going to be
yeah.
more
More invested
interested.
into it.
Yeah, more invested in their learning. Personal growth and purpose. A lot of times when you teach people skills, it opens their minds to new horizons. Like Harris Bian, I've talked about him. He graduated high school, realized he was sitting down, and every year more kids or more young people are going to graduate and sit down. So he came to our school to learn electricity, had no vision, and all of a sudden he wanted to go to college. He paid his way through college to get a chemistry and biology degree, and now wants to pursue a master's in public health. There's community and mentorship because we, again, we listen. Our instructors are very hands-on. They really like to work with the young people, help them, even if, like, we've had students come in, don't know how to read or write, they know how to flex their training to help them. And also, they're learning basic things about reading and writing in their journeys. And in some
Mhm,
cases, we've had them come back and serve. So it's paying it forward, or they're training in other schools. And so, like Armara said, UDS is a gigantic and highly practical vocational institution for those who want to be self-employed through trade. Harris Bian said, I didn't want to sit at home doing nothing. UDS gave me direction. Joseph Patrick Nathan said, I advise my fellow Liberian youth to learn a trade. It's career building.
mhm,
So those are just some of the feedback, the thoughts of
mhm.
what we're trying to do. And I guess, what problem are we solving? Uh, Reducing youth unemployment.
Right. And then also with that, just also being able to have, they contribute back to their own country to make it better. Because you had mentioned earlier how Liberia is in a way beholden to domestic, or not domestic, to international trade and those kind of things. So they're not really self-sufficient in a way. So this just kind of helps a way of reinvesting in one's country, to become, not as reliant on, international or other countries when it comes to, trade or, other economic factors like that.
Yeah, and some of it is like some of the foreign businesses, they're more interested in themselves. It's not like they're really investing in the country. They're
Right.
investing in their own businesses, and they're sending money back to their country of origin. So, and you're right, Liberia has been very dependent on imports. Um, and so, like, yeah, their consignment is coming from somewhere else. Like, even though there's a lot of homegrown food there, a lot of times they're going to the market and buying imported rice, imported produce and stuff like that, imported eggs.
Right.
Um, and so, going back to our mission, if we equip them with the skills and knowledge we're helping them know that I can do something different. And some of them had both ambitions. Theophilus wants to eventually create his own power plant, get a group of people together to create a power plant for Liberia. I
Hmm.
think we know that they're getting, I think it's either Ivory Coast or Guinea, they're getting some of their electricity from. It's just everything
Right.
is not as self-sufficient as it could be. Now, we all need to have a little bit of import and export, but they
Yeah,
lean
but
too heavy import and not enough of export or keeping stuff on the ground.
yeah, the main thing is reliance. You don't want to be too beholden or dependent on one country or other countries for things that you depend on. So if because each nation or each country has something that they specialize in. Like let's say, for example, rubber or agriculture, like you mentioned, rice, that people will get from the market. Just things like that are ways like where if you empower your young people to learn these things, they can, you know, with your example of the individual that wants to create a power plant, they can take their ideas to, set up reinvest in the country so that Liberia isn't reliant on, different countries for things that they rely on themselves.
Correct. Correct. And I think, when I go there, I enjoy listening to the youth because I think a lot of times, we've talked about this before, Kevin. Countries, even this country, sometimes just devalue young people. What do you know? You don't have experience, but that's the future of any country.
Right.
And if you're not investing in your youth and you're frustrating them and you're not taking the time to guide them, they can be your worst adversaries. You know, they
Yeah.
they can get into other things that like they can start, stealing. Other thing, because again, it's about survival.
Yeah, but
You
not
know,
rather than contributing to society, they're, I guess I don't want to say ruining it, but they're not being as
they're hindering. Maybe that's
yes, correct. Hindering. There you go. Thank you. They're hindering society instead of, being able to contribute to it. And you don't ever want to get into the place where you get to a point where a certain group can't do it anymore, but the next group that's supposed to take over, they're not ready to because you never took the time to teach them or show them how. Because I feel like that's how society continues to run, where it's like eventually we're all gonna, you know, we're not as spry or as youthful as we
hmm
used to be. So being able to invest in the next generation and showing them how they can continue, if not improve, uh, the way things are currently, would
and
determine how society continues as a whole.
correct. And like being in Liberia and you see the market and you see people have their wheelbarrows or tables, whatever, they're all selling like the same thing. It's a very much like open market has kind of been the place for most people to
Mhm.
survive on.
Right.
We've talked before, sometimes it's okay, motorcycles, that's another way that people can survive on, but that's not the same as thriving.
Right. I mean, like you said with the markets, that's not very much of a diversified market, if you will. I don't know if I've given this example on this podcast before, but in Brooklyn Park here, at least in the area where I live, there are at least two to three African stores all within like maybe less than a mile of each other. So it's like you're all selling the same thing, yet you're trying to find a way to get business from the same group of people or the same community of people. I mean, and granted, not all of them are the same. I mean, a couple I've seen have the idea where it's like they'll have, the grocery aspect, but then they have a deli in there as well. Some will just go strictly grocery, but still at that it's an oversaturated market where you're all, competing against each other for the same. You're competing against each other for the same clientele, but you're offering practically the same thing as the next person.
That's a good observation. Yeah, and I think when you educate people and you teach them skills, then they start working on thinking outside the box. What, like Theophilus, we need to have our own power plant. It's those big, bold visions and goals you want to see young people have, but then you need people to, support them on that journey. Like again, competition is so important, and unfortunately, in the U.S., we've seen a lot of our big corporations buy
Right.
up all these little things. They act like there's all these different brands, but they're under one umbrella. But we want competition. We want new businesses to start up. We want people to support those businesses. And in Liberia needs that. I mean, a lot of people want to go back home and start businesses in Liberia, but also they need to invest on the people on the ground as well. Help
Mhm.
these young people, reach those goals. Because that's again how you build society, a strong society, when you keep looking at, oh, I don't have to go back home to do all this. I could say, okay, I like this guy. He really has an ambitious goal. What do we have to do to help make that happen? And I think that's still an area that we have to figure out, how do you connect those dots?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm sure on this podcast I've talked about ad nauseum how I got to know what UDS is and what they do. So I just want to ask you, I guess in the beginning in 2013, because that's when I first heard about it. Um, what were some of the initial challenges as far as maybe volunteers or even getting started?
Good question. So, so we were basically, because Calvin, does auto mechanics, and so we were both doing a lot of our own self-funding, because you have to prove yourself first. You have to
Right.
prove that, okay, we're not just all talk. Um, and so that was one of the biggest challenges. It's how do you spend the money you have? So like I think what a lot of NGOs decide to do over there is like, okay, I gotta go get an office, pay rent, do X, Y, and Z. Well, if you don't have the money, all your
Mhm.
money's gonna go to that, and you're not gonna need to, or you're not gonna have the money to do what you want to do. So
Right.
we decided to start at Calvin's house, and we did that from 2014. At first, we were still, working with other people, trying to partner with them, but that wasn't always, a stable programming for us over there.
Right.
So we started at Calvin's house, and then we did that from 2014 until the end of 2016. And if we didn't do that, and again, that's probably a no-no, because here you can start things from your house, but not the same in Liberia. But
Right.
sometimes you got to break some of the rules to do what you need to do, and not every rule is
Exactly.
like a bad thing to break. But we did let them know where we were at, so we registered with the government. They knew where we were at. The biggest problem they had is we had no signboard, so which is which wasn't a deal breaker. We, over time, that, once we got into our own place, that was fine.
Hmm.
But and then again, some people were saying, well, why did you start your own? Well, he and I both volunteered with other organizations. Some of them failed. Some of them, it wasn't quite aligned with what we wanted to do. Because I mean, that's a fair question. And then at the same time, we kept seeing a lot of the same model. The local NGOs are hardworking. They do all the work, but they don't have money.
Hmm.
And the international NGOs have all the money, and they just kind of like, here, we'll give you projects. You can be like
Yeah.
subcontractor. So it wasn't very stable for them, for the local NGOs. And we thought, well, we do want to do something different. We don't want to be the typical model. And how do we make that happen? And so we just started doing something.
Right. So as far as the curriculum goes, how did that all get formed? What was the formation of that like? So the curriculum and then, the different trades that you wanted to offer, as well as getting the necessary instructors for those courses.
Good question. So initially, the 2014 and 2016, when we started out our vocational, it was more pilot projects. And again, the youth wanted to learn auto mechanics. We did a backpacks for peace where they sewed with the water sachets that people drink out of, and then they wanted computers. And so the curriculum kind of developed as we went along. When we decided to get our place and become official in the beginning of 2017, we wanted to find people that were in the trades who know that we couldn't pay them huge wages, but we'd give them the flexibility where it's like,
Mhm.
okay, you're going to meet your students at least 2 hours, 3 times a week. And every new term, which is a 1 year term, you get to sit down with your students and you guys can determine what's the best schedule for everybody. So
Right.
that way they could still go out there, hustle, get their pay based on their trade,
Hmm.
and at the same time give back by teaching because we would give like a stipend uh, around $100 a month. So I mean that's barely usually covers people's transportation for a month.
Yeah.
The curriculum did develop over time as we put things together, and then Calvin finally put these booklets together. So whoever comes in to teach, there's a standard format. In Liberia, there hasn't been a formal curriculum for vocational training, as like with the academic, there is a formal curriculum through the Ministry of Education. So when we got into the academic part, we added that. Now Calvin has been part of meetings where between youth and sports and the education ministries, they are trying to get a more formal curriculum for vocational training, but that hasn't happened yet. And again, we can flex it as we learn more things, we can adapt it, update it as necessary.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I know earlier you had mentioned that there was general interest from young people to learn certain trades or perf certain certain trades. But were there any, did you have to convince some as far as to see the benefit of what United Distance Stars was attempting to do, as far as garnishing interest?
Initially, no. Um, there was just a hunger to learn skills, and we've had people, they'll come in and they'll learn two trades at a time. We had one person learn three. She did computers, cosmetology, and I think hotel management. There was just a hunger to get skills and add to the skills. It's like a lot of people don't, like Calvin has multiple trades. I mean, if you want
Hmm.
to be successful in Liberia, if one thing's not working for you, you have something to fall back on. And some of the challenges we have faced, elections a couple of years ago, the candidates decided to do these pop-up free vocational training schools. So that drove some people
Hmm.
away.
Right.
Unfortunately, they weren't successful and they frustrated people. So like last year, 2024, they became distrusting because they got, taken advantage
Yeah.
of from that. And so we had to rebuild trust, not based on what we did, but based on what they
What
did.
others had done. Yeah.
Right. And then this year, as I told in a previous one, our biggest challenge was the quick hustle, and that was become a motorcycle taxi driver because
Right.
it gave instant money. But now, again, it's not sustainable or something you can grow from, and it could kill you.
Right.
But it just those are some of the kind of like things are constantly changing, right? We've seen
Right.
the gig economy, it disrupted like the taxi drivers when you had Uber and Lyft and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you have to know how to pivot and adapt in those situations. But there's certain things that we do well, like I talked about earlier, how we were able to manage the motorcycle. It's like, okay, we're not going to win that battle, but you have the opportunity to sit down with your instructor when you first get on to determine the schedule. So
Right.
that way you can get your motorcycle driving in to earn your money, but at
Yeah.
the
Still
same
do
time,
that.
you can invest in yourself to learn new skills.
Yeah. So is it a bit of, are there any challenges with getting new students each cohort, as far as to keep things going, as far as the learning?
Like I said, the two challenges we had there. Otherwise, our our recruitment is our current students, like before their term ends, they're out there telling their friends. So that's a big part of
Okay.
it. They do radio talk shows. You know, they talk about what we're doing. They'll bring on some either current students or alumni to tell their stories. And then they had the other one, which they call their Jehovah Witness, where they go out in the communities and go talk to people, go to their homes, whatever, um, let people know what we're doing. And so that's been our most effective recruitment strategy. We did try doing one of those group texts early on, but again, the
Mhm.
cost of that and the effectiveness of that wasn't there. I think it's more that relationship marketing, that, you know, one-to-one conversation, or
Yeah.
people get to know us or hear a story of someone who succeeded. Yeah.
Okay. And I know you had mentioned you had an issue with the government establishing pop-up vocational schools. Other than the political climate, are there any other barriers that continue to be consistent that do cause, challenges along the way?
Economic.
Economic.
So, you know, Liberia, you know, the world itself has had its economic challenges, but
Oh
Liberia,
yeah.
you had the Ebola crisis. Then in 2018, the UN peacekeepers left the country. They were the engine behind the economy. So it was like this huge vacuum kind
Mhm.
of left with them because they were renting everything, they were buying all the goods, you know, all that, you know, people back here, oh, they're renting my property. Yeah, they had money coming in and stuff like that. Then you had the pandemic
All
in
right.
2020. And now, because there's a lot of global uncertainty with the economy, it impacts Liberia more. So people have a struggle with money, you know, to pay for going to school. A lot of our young people don't have family support. Some of them don't even have parents anymore.
Mhm.
So, and one of the things we're realizing is that our academic and our vocational are coming together, because a lot of our young people that are in our academic part, they don't have parents, or they don't have parents that can support them. And so, and Calvin, I just talked to him last night. A lot of college students, Calvin, when they graduate, there's no jobs.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's the post, just going back to one of the episodes we did previously, the transition period post grad can be an interesting time, especially if you don't have the opportunities available.
Mhm.
That definitely could be something that makes it a bit, harder than usual.
Yeah, because we work with people who never graduated high school, might have limited education, to college graduates. Those are the people we've been training from that
Mm,
range.
okay. Going forward, do you see any opportunities to work with any of those universities or maybe schools in the country, as far as maybe like integrating what United Stars does with their own curriculum, like maybe offer programs or some sort of collaboration?
That's a good question. That one I have to defer to Calvin and what his thoughts are on that, because some of the schools are definitely, I mean, everybody's trying, education has become like a moneymaker,
Hmm.
you know, like graduation fees to some of these colleges can be $600. And the reason why is it's not like you're getting your renting your cap and gown and getting your diploma. Oh, we want you to have this branded tracksuit, or we want you to have this, and that. You know, like when
Alumni
you and
gear.
I graduated, those were like options. We didn't have to pay for that, but you could. There, they make it mandatory. And so
Oh,
it's very frustrating because it makes it where people don't get their degrees or their diplomas because it's out of the reach. You know, you've already paid your school fees. Now you're
Yeah,
gonna make it all this stuff. And
for
so
for things
one of
that
the
don't
things
really
we
help you.
do want to do, and we're working on it with Western Technical College here, is to partner with a school over here to have that sister school relationship. And we've tried this two other times. We tried Dunwoody because Dunwoody has a historical relationship with Liberia. They did train some people that were part of a Lamco mining company. But they're again, the need for them to fill jobs, they just couldn't take
Yeah.
us on. Then we tried South Central College in North Mankato. We were there. We already had plans to move forward, and the pandemic hit, and they lost their global funding.
Oh,
And so now that we're working with Wisconsin Technical College in La Crosse, again, we're dealing with some challenges here in the country with funding and all these type of things. So we're just taking baby steps with this one. They really want to work with us, but we're really taking our time. One of the things we like to do is have kind of peer-to-peer with instructors, and also how we can better, you know, position ourselves with more modern training.
yeah.
And and again, they have to be careful with being over extended themselves because whatever funding they have. So it's going to be baby steps. But I think there's better, we can have other partnerships with that. I'm always open because you need a village of institutions to help an organization.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess what I was thinking was maybe with a school in Liberia or university, you have you take what United Eastern Stars offers, so some of your programs and integrate that with their curriculum. That way, while they're in school, they're learning these things as well. Kind of like here, like in high school, some high schools have, woodworking or
Mhm.
they have I know when I was in high school I had an animation video class. Just things like that. That way just so you can like start learning those skills even while you're still learning other things, like your basic curriculum.
Well,
But yeah, that was just kind of all my thinking.
no, you have a point to that. So Joseph, who I interviewed last year, he didn't have the opportunity to go to college, but he came to learn our electricity program. And in his class, he had someone who graduated with electrical degree from University of Liberia who never had any hands-on training. So
Wow,
there is
that's
a point what you're
that's
saying
remarkable.
there, if it's like, okay, but again, I would have to defer to Calvin if that's even feasible and what that would look like.
Right. Yeah, because on paper it sounds like a great idea, but you also have to, actually implement it and see how all that's gonna work. But yeah, I was just thinking of like different
No, it's a
ideas. I
great
mean,
idea. We just have to see if it works.
yeah, I mean like even you could do an alternative learning option because
Hmm.
there are alternative learning options here in the United States, like getting your GED almost, so something sort of like that. But yeah, like you said, something to keep in mind.
Well, I think it- where you're going is a good idea. And again, we have to see if it's feasible because
Yeah.
I said a lot of our students were college graduates. And because they lacked any skills, they weren't going to find a job. Like a lot of them graduate with a business administration degree, a bachelor's degree.
Mhm.
Where are you going to find jobs with that? You could sit in the government, push paper around, but you're not going to get paid a lot. And sometimes you're not even going to have paper and pen to do it.
Right. And there's no like as you mentioned, there's no true private sector to
Correct.
translate that into.
Yeah.
So I guess that's another area of focus. So if we have these graduates that maybe start to establish this private sector, you can kind of, go from there. But, that's kind of right now we're just kind of, brainstorming,
Right.
brainstorming ways to kind of, push things forward. But yeah, it just got me thinking, with what United Nations Stars does, there's just ways that it could possibly be integrated in so many different places while still having the same impact that its intended impact.
Well, and if you remember in the tea time you joined, Odell, who's in the computer program, she
Hmm.
graduated 23 from our catering program, but she's also a university student. So
Right.
she knows, even though she's trying to get a business administration degree, she knows that she wants to get skills in catering and computers to actually be able to establish her own business. She's got something small on the side right now, but like when I interviewed her, she said, I already got my business name. I already have my Facebook page ready to go, but I need to have X, Y, and Z before I launch. And finishing a degree and coming back to us for computer school or computer training was some of those elements for her to do that. And
Right.
so you have some very strategic thinkers over there that see there's that balance between the degree and the vocational training.
Okay. Do you think this is something that maybe the government might find as beneficial for them to support, just given, the vision and what United Stars is attempting to do in the country, or for the country rather?
Um, the education sector is a challenge. There's not usually a lot of funding that goes out to schools. They have government schools because we considered like a private school.
Mm.
Um, but even there, it's supposed to be free, but it's not. I was in a school in 2009 in Johnsonville, and it was a government school, and it's like they had a bunch of broken benches. The toilets that were outside, no one could access them, so there was just feces and everything near there. And so the and we have what we call a TVET permit, which
Mhm.
is through UNESCO. It's something they want us to have. It's called Technical Educational Vocational Training. And if you have that permit, you're supposed to be shortlisted for funding opportunities, but that doesn't always work that way because they have their favorites. And how and when do you become their favorite? And like our curriculum we get from the Ministry of Education should be free, but we had to pay for it.
Right.
You have someone out there hustling books that says should not be resold, Ministry of Education, but they're being sold.
They're being sold
It's
anyway.
yes. So it's not the same as here where you have, and I think people want to change it, but you have to change the attitude within the
Right.
government to say this is important. Yeah.
Right. Because no one can see the importance for you or have the vision for you. It's kind
Right.
of something you gotta like do for yourself. But
Right.
yeah, I mean that sounds really awesome. Just being a part of it and just like getting a bit of an in-depth look at like how everything came to be. Again, when I first heard about it in 2013, I was still in high school, so I wasn't really sure the inner workings, but just after today and even like after volunteering for a few years, it's been really great to see like where it's come from to where it is now, and even where it could go based on the conversations that we're having.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, because it's about helping young people, and I think we all benefit when we invest in young people because it helps grow a society and it helps make it better.
All right. My last question, I'll make it a fun one. What's the best part of the graduation ceremony or process?
We've only been to one, but I've viewed a few. It's just the joy. They're singing, we always have it where they run it. So they determine what the program's going to be about, who their guest speaker is. So again, it's always youth led.
Hmm.
And they have their march coming in, and they pick songs. They have sometimes people might whatever their own creative thing. We've had people dance or whatever. And it's just the level of joy, that I went through this journey. I'm done. some, a lot of our students are already making money before they graduate because again, it's that
Right.
hands-on learning.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, I'm official now. I can go out and do my thing.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. And I can't imagine I can imagine it's even great to see or well even whether it's in person or from afar. But yeah, that's awesome. Just being able to, see and share in you know, the achievement of what they've been able to do.
Correct. All right. Well, let's get to some announcements. So things have kind of changed up. So we were the charity of choice for AFRI's BIPOC Business Expo, but that got canceled. That was supposed to be this Wednesday. And, Kevin and I are in Minnesota, and unfortunately, a week ago Saturday, we had Minnesota politician Melissa Hortman and her husband got killed, and there was another shooting of a politician, Mark Hoffman, and his wife. They both had a lot of injuries. They had some relationship to this program, and so she canceled it. The Tamba Foundation fundraiser that we were going to hold next Saturday, again, with the climate, everything going on, we decided to move that to August 23rd. And as Kevin and I talked earlier about before we got on, there's also a lot of graduations right now. It's kind of like
Grad season.
graduation season. So that really wasn't worth our time. Uh, if you're not on our Facebook group, some of our instructors have been sharing posts of what their students are learning, doing right now. So that's been great to see. Uh, we also, beyond Ganawulu, who's a former board member, continues to support us. He is inviting some of our computer students next Saturday for a blockchain training. Blockchain is something that has been growing for the last, I don't know, almost a decade now. And so that's a great opportunity for them. And some of our staff and a couple students this past Tuesday and Wednesday got to participate in Jean Gelaglu, his African economic, I'm missing some, it's AEDS, he's in St. Paul, but this was a African 2-day virtual seminar. So they got to learn about a lot of different things. Calvin was in the group chats asking questions of the panelists and stuff like that. So it was just a great opportunity to have that, to be part of that. I will make sure I explain everything in the description. And again, we got to figure out, we haven't figured out, but we'll have a virtual tea time coming up here in July. Got to work with Kelvin on that. And the academic school will be closing soon for this term. And we'll reopen sometime in September. And we'll have our first, next year, we'll have our first seniors. So we'll finally reach that 12th grade mark. And
Oh,
so we're
nice.
pretty excited about that. So yeah, that's what, oh, and if you're interested in supporting us as a donor, volunteer, or better board member, we'd love to have you to help us out. We've been around for 12 years. As you heard, we're really making an impact with young people. We're all volunteer on this side. If you're on the board, it's a working board. You have an opportunity to do one-time donations, monthly donations, volunteer. We need a lot of help, whether it's social media, fundraising events, technical, administrative, whatever, we need help. Because there's a lot of work we need to do. We need to continue to get the word out and partnerships. If you know anybody who's in the trades who wants to support an organization, bring them on. Any corporate partnership, whatever it is, we'd be more than happy to talk to them.
Mm. Yep. And just a reminder for everyone, if you do want to check out any of our past episodes, I know during the last couple, I've kind of mentioned a few of them during the podcast that we do. They're available on our YouTube channel. If you search Uniting Distant Stars, we also have a link in there as well in the bio. But you can also check us out on our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, unitingdistantstars.org, our website.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, we're always welcome your comments, your topic suggestions, Or if you're somebody who wants to come on and have a conversation, you're invited.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you later.
Yep. Bye-bye.